What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday was like a mini E3. We had new game announcements, accessories, systems, even a new mini console that was just kind of thrown out there, and all of it just happened to take place on April 1st. So we're going to go over all the completely real announcements, I'm sure, here today. Also, we are going to be talking about another strange console that may actually exist depending on how things go in Russia. And then we're also going to be talking about a game that appears finally to be set for a release, and it's been a long time coming for this one. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And of course, members for the channel do get Newswave early and ad-free. If you'd like to learn more about that, click the join button down below this video. And we're going to start today with Hiroki, Totoki, and Sony. As we know, Jim Ryan now retired at Sony as he's made his exit starting March 31st. Now we're into April. And the question has now become, one, well, what are the plans to find a new head of PlayStation, new CEO? And two, what exactly is Hiroki Totoki going to do to start setting things up in the interim? Well, my assumption, because they are, of course, going to be looking for someone new to head PlayStation, is to just kind of keep the status quo. Although he did talk quite a bit about trying to reach other customers outside of just PlayStation, even going on further to say they're become more aggressive, especially, I think, on the PC and mobile side. Don't necessarily know if they're all of a sudden going to start porting stuff to other consoles, but certainly they want to accelerate their growth in the PC sector, considering they are seeing actually some decent success with something like Horizon Forbidden West most recently, alongside of Helldivers 2. But still, I think really they're mostly focused on finding, well, the successor for Jim Ryan and just kind of float along until then. So here's hoping we find out who exactly is going to be running PlayStation here, at least in the next month or two. Also, we do have Grounded coming to the Nintendo Switch April 16th, and with the store page live, we now have the file size requirements for it, which on the Xbox Series currently, it is just over 10 gigabytes. I wanted to double check that, so I checked on my Xbox as I have it downloaded, and yeah, it's just over 10 gigabytes there. Well, on the Switch, currently, it's coming in at about 3 gigabytes, so a third of the file size, and the Switch has been doing this consistently throughout its life, where a game will be much larger on other systems, but I will point out Grounded, when it first came out, was like just over 4 gigabytes. It's kind of grown in size based on updates and other bits of content that they've added throughout its run, and I think really the big thing with the Switch clearly is you get like lower textures, that sort of thing, and they're able to do more compression with it seems. But I mean, that's still pretty impressive, and the fact that there will be a physical copy for it, it makes me think that obviously it's going to just be on the cartridge, considering 3 gigabytes, sure, they could put that on like a 4 gigabyte cart, but there will be updates coming down the line, I'm sure, as Obsidian and Microsoft has been working to make this just a full-on live service game that has seen actually some pretty good success. So while you can buy a cartridge version of it, it's probably going to be out of date pretty quickly as they go through even the first year on the Switch. But that is coming up April 16th, and pretty impressive to see it coming in even at 3 gigabytes on the system. Oh, and it looks like we have an update around Silent Hill 2 with an ESRB rating update, and we can see, yes, it is a mature rated game. Go figure. But the thing about this is people are now anticipating some sort of news around Silent Hill 2, and while we have seen bits and pieces of it, we don't have a release date at this time, and we are kind of expecting it to come out this year, so you feel like we'd be getting closer and closer to them revealing the release date, maybe a few months away from when it's coming out. And now I'm kind of thinking about when they could make this announcement, considering the ESRB rating has been updated. It seems like everything's ready to go. I thought of Summer Game Fest, as many people I'm sure did, and I'm sure Jeff Keighley would love to announce anything with Konami right now, but otherwise there's also belief that Sony would be having some sort of showcase, maybe in May, ahead of all the summer event festivities. So that's kind of what I'm looking towards now, is for this to get its release date alongside other PlayStation titles or PlayStation funded titles, even with different second and third parties, probably around May. So keep an eye out for that. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with all the stuff that happened on April 1st. Of course, where all these different gaming publications, Twitter accounts, websites just like to throw up different headlines. At times, companies will throw ideas out there to see if anyone bites on it. If it doesn't work out, they just go, oh, April Fools, and they just kind of move along from there. Well, in this case, we had some stuff that was kind of hard to tell if it was a joke or not. Others were just absolutely ridiculous, and I would say sat more on kind of the fun side of the whole thing. But in this case, we'll start with one that was kind of blurring the lines, and even I looked at it and said, ooh, is that actually happening? This had to do with Batocera, that is a very popular front-end emulation platform you can use on mini PCs, Raspberry Pis, that sort of thing. Well, it was noticed that on their GitHub, they had posted up a commit to remove any Nintendo emulator from Batocera, like completely. I think it was even discussed at one point that there was a DMCA in place from weeks ago that they had to kind of follow along with. Well, after quite a bit of panic, it seemed, in their Discord and on social media, this was posted up, we can see, from Retro Game Core. Says, thanks to those who pointed out that their changelog has a reference in Latin to April Fool's Day. So it's like it could be a rather mean-spirited joke. And yeah, look, I get it. They're trying to have fun with it and maybe make something that people would be, that's really believable. To me, though, with April Fools nowadays, with all the stuff that goes around online that can be very deceiving, I sort of feel like you have to just go into the land of ridiculousness with your announcements so people go, okay, yeah, obviously that's fake, and it's just kind of for laughs. That's sort of how I'd be playing April Fool's Day now in our current climate with social media. So unfortunate there, because people did believe, yes, Batocera is just removing all of their Nintendo emulators. Not the case, it appears right now. But let's take a look at some of the April Fool's Day jokes that were more ridiculous and I guess lighthearted. For example, a new 1-2 Switch game. This is from Nintendo Life, 1-2 Switch Flash Mob Frenzy. Holiday 2024. We need another 1-2 Switch game after what we just had with everybody 1-2 Switch. Anyway, on top of that, we had IGN with the Virtual Boy Pro, sort of like this augmented reality headset playing into the Labo idea, but you can use it when you're driving around and play Mario Kart and in real life. I do like this one. Brian Altano clearly had a lot of fun with this right up here, and even had different like press release shots of person using it and what the HUD would look like. And while it's not as in-depth as when they made an entire trailer for a Zelda movie back in the day, this still looked professional, even believable enough. But obviously it's Virtual Boy Pro, and we know Nintendo's not going to necessarily do that. I also like the Elden Ring expansion that Bandai Namco put out, where they just expanded Elden Ring, and you get it, right? Play on words there. Or what about Cyberpunk, where you can get it on 97,619 3.5-inch diskettes. Yeah, so you can have a bunch of floppy disks with Cyberpunk to install it, which would take forever. Reminds me of Windows 98. I think that had 40 or so floppies, and it took forever, hours to install it. There you go, 97,619. Probably take what would that take, a year or something? We did have Sega getting in on the action here with the CLC. Cartridge loadable content, obviously playing into the idea of what they did with Sonic and Knuckles back in the day, where you had the cartridge that was kind of a pass-through, and you put Sonic 2 or 3 on it. If you use Sonic 1, I remember there was a way you could do you could hold buttons down when you turned it on, and it would throw you into special stages. So technically Sonic 1 also worked, but the idea there was you could play as Knuckles in either of those two games, and it was sort of like, as they say here, downloadable content or cartridge loadable content. And they just have a whole tower of these things stacked on top of each other, whether it's big head mode, which they even have an example of that here, or any other fun little Easter eggs and what you normally see as cheat codes thrown in. They have a fun 90s inspired advertisement that might fit into a magazine back in the day. And then the one that I'm sure just tore people up inside, Retro Blast, put out the Sega Dreamcast Mini officially being announced. That one has to sting. Yes, they even had a little bit of a lineup. I mean, they had 9 games. They're good ones, right? Jet Set Radio, Shenmue, Daytona USA, Marvel vs. Capcom, Code Veronica, Sonic Adventure, Space Channel 5, Crazy Taxi. I would love to see a Dreamcast Mini, and you know what? To me, April Fool's Day can also be a time where a company can just throw something out there, as I mentioned, and just see what happens. See if it sticks. If not, April Fools. But would Sega someday be like, hey, Dreamcast Mini, and then just kind of look around and see what kind of engagement they get, and they're like, oh, it's April Fools for now. Well, unfortunately, this isn't coming from a Sega account, so who knows with that one, but April Fool's Day is, I understand people look at that and can be kind of annoyed. I think if it's good enough, like if it's fun and it's not necessarily something that's there to be really deceiving, like, oh, this is something I can't really tell if it's real or not. If it's like the Virtual Boy Pro, we understand. Sega with their CLC, the 97,000 floppies for Cyberpunk, we can all look at that and understand, okay, clearly that's not real and it's supposed to be more of a joke. Those are the ones that I actually enjoy for April Fool's Day, not necessarily the ones where it looks real and you're disappointed on the other side, like a Dreamcast Mini. But let me know what you thought of April Fool's Day for 2024 and what, I guess, some of your favorite announcements were from that day. Next up, let's talk about a game people have been waiting and waiting and waiting to finally hear about its release date after it was officially announced as a full sequel in 2019, and that, of course, is Hollow Knight Silksong. Because it appears some movement is happening behind the scenes for this title, in the sense that store pages are going live. Now, I will admit, some of these store pages have been live, but it appears some have been updated and others have been added so it can be on a wish list. For example, here, the Xbox store page, you can see, does have Hollow Knight Silksong. And I noticed that Nick over on Xbox Portfolio Senior Content Planning Manager, mentions that it's a new cool game to wish list. Okay. I mean, obviously there's a lot of interest around Hollow Knight Silksong, so you make a tweet like that, you kind of know the eyes that are going to be on that one. But also, I mean, it's live over on the Nintendo Store. I think on Steam it's been live for a while now, so that one's not too surprising. And at this point, it's like, okay, are we finally going to get that announcement? Team Cherry clearly has taken whatever Hollow Knight Silksong was going to be originally, which I think was just going to be more content for Hollow Knight, and they've kind of broken it off into becoming just its own game and sort of taken it to the next level, right? The scope has obviously evolved over time for it. Well, there is an event coming up here on April 10th, the Blockbuster Indie Game Showcase, and it's going to be about an hour or so at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. I don't know if this is where Silksong is going to be. And the reason I say that is because it does appear to me anyway, Hollow Knight Silksong has gone to the next level where it can legitimately be a closeout for a Nintendo Direct even. And yes, there is a Direct that has been rumored to happen in April, and maybe this is something that would be there as one of their big announcements. Okay, Hollow Knight Silksong coming out maybe over the summer, and we know it's also going into Xbox Game Pass. Clearly, it's going to be a big deal just across all these different platforms, and I think many of us are just ready to finally be able to play it. But I also feel like we've been through many false alarms for Hollow Knight Silksong, and it just feels like it's never actually coming out. So here's hoping 2024 is the year where we get Silksong, and I guess I'll be keeping my eyes out for all the different events coming up here in the next, I mean, really 2 months if you think about it. We're in April now. 2 months from now, we'll be into June, looking towards Summer Game Fest, and I'm sure a bunch of other events from all these different companies that will probably try to have their own little mini E3 events throughout June and July. So there'll be plenty of opportunities, I'm sure, for Hollow Knight Silksong to get announced. So here's hoping it'll be sooner rather than later. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a new game system that appears to be entering development, or at least has a chance to enter development. And no, it's not from Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo. It would be from Russia. This is posted up over on VGC. They are citing RT, saying Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly instructed his government to explore developing video game consoles in Russia. Now, many of you sent me this story because it on its own sounds like an April Fool's Day joke. And hey, look, I put it in the episode about April Fool's stuff, so there you go. I've kind of covered all bases here. But according to RT, Putin order was issued following a meeting earlier this week in which he instructed the government to weigh requirements for organizing production of both stationary and portable game consoles in Russia, with the deadline for executing the order set for June 15th. And to go a bit further, as part of the order, they would be developing an operating system and a cloud system for delivering games to users, according to a statement published on the Kremlin's website. Okay, so I think this would be a very interesting thing to even just see happen. It would take a while for a game system, obviously, to be developed and put out there. But I mean, I'd be curious what kind of games would go to this thing. which publishers would even show up for it, if any, or would they also be making the games then? Because that could lead to all kinds of ridiculous and outlandish videos on YouTube. You know, all the people on YouTube would be ordering these things, different creators, to try to review either the system, the games, both, accessories. There's a lot that goes into this, and that makes me wonder if they themselves realize how much actually goes into making a game system, the games, and apparently the entire infrastructure and ecosystem surrounding that when it comes to delivery of games, because I don't think they would do physical copies of these things. Again, it'd be years off, and by then we'd probably be primarily digital anyway. So just a lot of possibilities here, and that is if the order even goes through, there's a chance that they look at it and go, okay, that's a lot of work. We're not going to do this, but apparently we'll find out sometime in June, so we'll see. And before we go to the comments of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, how do you feel about April Fool's Day in gaming news? 52% say it does depend on the headline, if the joke is good. I agree with that. I mean, you can have some that are just funny or just fun, and you're like, all right, yeah, that's a good time. But then we have 33% say, I don't like it at all. And I also see that sentiment quite a bit, where they're like, what? It's going to feel like a waste of a day. There's going to be a lot of stuff that isn't real at all. Although, if you're someone who wants to just put information out there and it's 100% dead on accurate, and you're just leaking the info on a 4chan or something, put it out on April 1st. And it'll just kind of blend in at that time. And I think we've had that before. I feel like Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee leaked out on April Fool's Day, like a year before it came out. And no one really noticed. That's how you do it. You put the info out there April 1st, and no one will believe you until it actually comes true. And we'll finish up with the comments of the day. We'll start with this one here. This is from Zeus, who says, don't believe anything you hear today. My boss called and fired me this morning. You think I'm staying home? Not a chance. Maybe your boss just wanted to see how people would react to getting fired, so they just called all the different employees one by one and just told them they were fired and see what reaction they would get. And obviously play it off on April Fools. Of course, none of this is real, but then in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, I know who would burst out into tears and who just wouldn't care at all. So they can kind of put that down in their notes and tuck it away for, I mean, what's a very diabolical boss at that point. And then we'll go to a comment from the members video here. This is from Deflated Badger, who says, just found out that YouTube Premium features don't work for members videos. No background play and enhanced bitrate 1080p. Good job, YouTube. So I have a plan for this one. I think we're gonna try this out in the next video or two just to see how it works. But it's very weird how YouTube is doing this stuff with these members videos, and it's strange because it's like you want to just have the best possible experience there, obviously, if you're doing ad-free and that sort of thing. So I have a plan. It's going to feel almost wasteful because I would have to post up 2 videos almost to make it work. But at the end of it, I feel like you would have the background play, the enhanced bitrate, that sort of thing. So I think it'd be worth doing. It's just like an extra upload to then reroute people. YouTube needs to get this thing figured out, but for members, I want to get it figured out right now, and I think we're going to try that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas all the ridiculous April Fool's Day announcements. Let me know which ones were your favorite, which ones annoyed you the most, and then also, what about Hollow Knight Silksong? Things are starting to move around in the background with these different store pages, wish lists being added, that kind of thing. Do you think we're finally coming up on a day where we get that official release timing? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.